What's going on, guys? We are live. If you are in the session, drop a comment and let me know. We are going to give it a few minutes to get some viewers in the session. As you're joining, just drop a comment, let me know you're here, and we'll get underway shortly. If you are in the session, drop a comment down below. We're going to give it about 5 minutes to get this underway. So everyone sit tight if you're starting to join. As you are joining, just drop a comment, let me know you're here. We'll get underway once we get a few more people in the session. We are still at one viewer right now, which is all right. I'll give it a couple more minutes, and if we don't get enough viewers, we might have to postpone the session, so we'll see how this goes. In this session, we were going to cover systems, so SOPs, standard operating procedures, outsourcing, setting spend goals, return on investment goals, and then how to rinse and repeat the process and really scale your Amazon wholesale business in 2022. The title of this video is How to Avoid the Q4 Hangover. As you guys know, Q4 is the busiest time of the year, so sometimes coming off of Q4 can be a bit discouraging because sales, we tend to see a dip in sales from what they once were in November and December. So in this live session, my goal was to give you ways to combat that and help rebuild and reboot in Q1, 2, and 3 so that Q4 of 2022, you are ready to go better than you were this past year. So I'm going to give it a few more minutes. If I don't get any more viewers in the next few minutes, we will either postpone the session or I will just make a video about the content that we were going to go over today, and I'll upload that to YouTube for you guys. So I'll just sit tight for another couple minutes or so. Looks like we got four in the session. Again, if you're just joining, drop a comment. Let me know you're here. That way we can start to get some content underway. Again, if you're just joining, drop a comment. Looks like James is in the session. Says, how's it going, Brad? It's going well. Right now we have 2 users, or 2 viewers. So I'm going to give it until about the 10-minute mark. Right now we've been live for about 7.5 minutes. So I'm going to give it till about the 10-minute mark or so. If we don't get a few more viewers, I am going to either postpone this session or just create a YouTube video about the content we were going to go over today. So if you are in here, just sit tight for the next couple minutes. For those that are in here, again, I mentioned before, SOPs are huge, guys. In order to scale your business, that's one of our number one goals this year is to build out more systems so that we are able to scale. I see my friend Shannon is here. Good to see you, Shannon. Right now, for those that are just joining, I had mentioned that if we don't get a few more people, we can do a few different things here. We can condense this down to a shorter session, and in this case, it'll be more like a private session for you guys that are here, or we can postpone this, or I'll just provide it in a video for you guys. But as I was saying, systems and procedures are going to be absolutely key in growing your business. I cannot emphasize that enough, the importance of systems. We're working on building out an SOP for every single task and component that takes place in running a wholesale business. And I was going to, in a few minutes, break down a lot of those components with you guys. We have a couple documents, so I was going to jump into a screen share. So I'm just going to, again, give it another minute or so and we'll see the turnout that we get for tonight. If you guys have any questions in the meantime, feel free to drop a comment down below. All right, guys. For those that are here, we're just going to get underway. And I'm going to provide this information for you guys that are here. And of course, this will be a recorded session, so you will have access to it. Jordan says he's just starting out, he or she is just starting out in wholesale. Great to hear, Jordan, that you've come to the right place. You know, I cover a ton of beginner content in wholesale, so you are definitely in the right spot for that. I'm going to share my screen for you guys. So let me know if you can see this. You should be able to. We're going to cover some components here, and I'm just going to toggle back and forth just in case people ask questions. But right now we have a few people in the session, so let's get the content rolling. In terms of SOPs, right? What are they? They're standard operating procedures. They are what allow your business to function day in and day out. So the goal when building a business is to create these SOPs so that eventually you don't have to be entirely involved 100% in the operational day-to-day components of the business. As an owner and operator myself, I am involved in almost all the operations, so it's not necessarily something that is going to happen um, in the beginning. It takes time to build these out, right? You're an operator in the beginning, and eventually you grow your business to where you're more of an overseer and working more on the business as opposed to inside of the business, right? That's where the biggest growth happens. So in wholesale and just running an inventory based business, there are so many different tasks that you do if you think about it. And I just want to list out a few here in this screen share that we're going to go over. And some of those, start with Amazon account management. Aside from the specific wholesale components, which we are going to get into, Amazon account management is key, right? Managing your stock levels, stranded inventory, reconciling shipments, your feedback, customer messages, returns, order processing, a lot of different components going into Amazon account management. Account health, of course, right? Making sure your account health is on point in terms of your shipping rates, your tracking IDs, your making sure you're not getting any IP claims, intellectual property claims from brands on Amazon. So all of that stuff is what it comprises account management, which just requires your own work to oversee it. And it's called administrative work. So in terms of wholesale, right, we have sourcing. From there, we have contacting, building relationships, going through price lists, sending purchase orders, and then inventory, right? The biggest challenge of them all, arguably, which is inventory. So receiving and shipping out inventory. There's an accounting term called just-in-time inventory, right? Restocking your product so that you're not getting too much supply that you're going to have for an extended period of time, or you're not getting, or you're at the same time, you're not running out of inventory as well. So keeping that just in time inventory, which is one of the biggest challenges in an ever moving inventory based business, right? Along with this is returns, order processing, if you're doing merchant fulfilled, FBA shipments, reconciling inventory, right? Making sure that if the company is shipping direct to Amazon or if the company is shipping to you, that you receive the exact amount that was on the PO. Also, making sure that if you're shipping direct to Amazon, whether it's from the company or yourself, Amazon is receiving the number of units that were sent out. All tasks that have to get done on, a weekly, monthly basis. And then, of course, restocking and replenishing your inventory. So these are all components that go into a wholesale business, right, on Amazon, and there's more to it. I've just covered some of the big ones here, but there's definitely more intricacies involved in terms of what needs to get done. But think about all the tasks that are involved in your business and what you have to do, and write a procedure for each and every one of them. And that's going to be my best piece of advice for helping you scale, especially, if you're a beginner wholesaler, start early because eventually you do want to outsource. Start early and have a system in place, right? Sourcing, we have entirely outsourced to VAs. VAs do all my sourcing. So I have a full document with an SOP that breaks down each and every item so that my VAs can learn and understand how we execute our processes. At the same time, I also have training videos, very comprehensive training videos that I'm able to give to someone else. So let's say I have a VA who is doing some work for me, and for whatever reason it does not work out. They quit. They can't work anymore. So what might happen is, if you don't have an SOP in place, all of the work that virtual assistant has done, now you have to go out and find someone else to teach them how to do. Whereas if you have training videos and documents that go into detail on how to execute these tasks, you can simply hire anyone, right? It's okay if your employees quit. It's okay. Obviously, we don't want that, but that happens. So we have to just have the systems in place in order to immediately transfer that line of work to someone else. Contacting, right? Reaching out to brands. This is outsourceable, although it's the last task, in my opinion, that you should outsource. I have not outsourced contacting. Contacting and building relationships are the fundamental pillars of running a wholesale business. It's where I say the magic happens, right? On the phone, making those calls, reaching out to suppliers is where you're really able to close accounts. It takes a lot of work and experience to get better at this, right? It takes time. It does not happen overnight. You can't outsource this to a foreign VA, in my opinion, because you can't have someone overseas building relationships with brands, right? Some people might beg to differ with me on that, but in my opinion, in my experience, you need to be doing this yourself. And if you're not going to be doing it yourself, you need to have someone who really has a vested interest or some type of sales skills in order to close deals and close more accounts for your business. Let's just jump back over for a second. Shannon asked, how early in your wholesale journey should you start building out an SOP? I would recommend right off the bat, once you fully understand the process and what you have to do, I always say don't outsource until you know how to do it yourself from front to back, inside and out. Once you know how to do it yourself, at that point you can outsource the task. But as you're doing it, continue to build your SOP and fine tune that SOP, right? It's not going to be perfect in the beginning. You're going to have to refine it along the way as you learn new things, as new changes on Amazon come up, as wholesale accounts come, as they go. It's going to be something that is constantly being optimized. So it's not necessarily a set in stone SOP, rather a document that you have to go off of for yourself and for anyone else who works with you in your business. Going through price list, we've completely outsourced that too, almost completely outsourced. I would say about 90% of my price lists are outsourced through people and software, right? I use a program called PC2. It's an excellent software for going through price lists. It has expedited the process. We got it in the beginning of last year, and it has expedited that process of going through price lists. There might be weeks where I get 20 different price lists, 20 even more different price lists. I don't have the time to reach out to 100 companies, source all of the brands that I'm reaching out to, and then go through 20 price lists on top of that. So what has enabled me to contact 100 plus companies is the fact that I have other people sourcing and other people going through price lists. Price list is a very time consuming task. It was one of my biggest challenges in outsourcing, but we've managed to put the proper people in place in order to efficiently execute those tasks. Another task in wholesale is sending purchase orders. For us, this gets done on every Monday. So at the beginning of every week, we look through our inventory, determine what needs to be restocked based on keeping a 30-day supply, and then I send my purchase orders on Monday of every week. Of course, a purchase order might get sent in the middle of the week sometimes, or at the end of the week here and there, if something is running low on inventory and we might have skipped over something when doing the replenishing process. But for the most part, I make sure all of that gets out of the way on Monday so that I can focus the rest of the week on contacting new suppliers and getting new accounts. The more accounts you have, the more time consuming it's going to be to restock and replenish your inventory and send those purchase orders, right? You might have 20 purchase orders to send. It depends on how many accounts you have, what kind of velocity you're doing. Again, inventory is a big one, just in terms of reconciling your inventory. You want to make sure what you receive is consistent with the amounts on your POs. I have had companies send me the wrong amounts. I have had Amazon plenty of times receive the wrong amounts. I've sent in case quantities to Amazon of 50, 60, 100 units, and Amazon claims to receive none of it. So that's why you have to keep all of your invoices on file, because you will be able to reconcile this. And Amazon will allow you to solve this discrepancy of inventory based on how many you sent in versus how many they received. And if you have an invoice from the manufacturer or an authorized distributor showing a total order volume of at least 10 units, almost 10 times out of 10, and I say almost because it doesn't always happen, but almost 10 times out of 10, Amazon will take that invoice if it meets their criteria. Returns, that's a big one. The more volume you do, you are going to have returns that come back to you from customers. And Amazon, if you're using FBA, Amazon is going to send your returns back to you if they are what's called unfulfillable. And then at that point, you need to determine if you are going to send that inventory back in, if it is fulfillable. If it is in poor condition, maybe you can sell it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace for a break even or a small loss. Or sometimes we just have to write off that inventory. I'm going to be coming out with a video by the end of this week on the return process, what that looks like for FBA versus FBM. So make sure you guys keep a lookout for that. And then, as I mentioned, of course, restocking and replenishing inventory, right? That's a big one. A lot of wholesale is such an upfront process where you do most of the work up front, you source, you contact, you go through price lists, and then finally you have those accounts set up. And now it's about restocking and replenishing those accounts. However, you also have to continue to do the contacting because accounts come and go. They're not always going to last forever. I've found that pretty much every product has a lifespan, and it just depends on the nature of the account. Is it an exclusive? Is it a very selective agreement? Is it one of the low-hanging fruit that we've talked about? What is the nature of the account? Because that's going to dictate the lifespan of the account. An exclusive agreement where you are providing value to that brand in terms of optimization, um, performance, different components that we've went over, that is an account that's going to have a much longer lifespan than an account where you're just, purchasing inventory along with everyone else, and that vendor you work with takes on any and all sellers and don't care if about limiting Amazon. That's something that might have more of a shorter lifespan because we might see price tanking involved, map violations, they just oversaturation, different components like that. We got another question here from Shannon. Should you be an expert in everything before outsourcing or just have a good understanding? Well, you need to be able to teach outsourcing to other people. So if you can't teach it, in my opinion, you can't outsource it because you need to have a system in place. And if that system is not fine-tuned and it's not optimized, and now you have someone else doing it, there's going to be more that just slips beneath the cracks, right? Once you have your system in place and you are as close to an expert as you can be, and of course, we're never going to be 100% experts. I learn something new every day. New things pop up. That's just the nature of the business. But once you have a system down and you really know what you're doing at that point, I would recommend outsourcing. At the same time, I would not recommend building an SOP until you're an expert. I would recommend building out your SOPs now as you're working in those operational components, because it's actually going to be harder to build out the SOPs if you wait a couple years, right? If you wait, until 1, 2, 3 years down the road when you have built up your business and now you're trying to backtrack and go through all the SOPs, it's going to be more time consuming. So that covered a decent amount on outsourcing and systems. I just want to cover briefly spending and return on investment, and really, how to scale your business. We talk about avoiding that Q4 hangover, rebuilding in Q1. Guys, everybody wants to sell, $1 million on Amazon, $100,000 on Amazon. And I always tell people to stop focusing on the number that you sell because that is outside of your control. I cannot control directly what sells in my Amazon store. It's just, what's going to sell is what's going to sell. We can do everything we can to increase sales, but I can't tell you that I'm going to sell $1 million, in a year. I can't tell you that I'm going to sell, $2 million this year. So rather, what we do is we set goals that we can control and have direct control over. And that involves your spending amount. So let's just take a look at some numbers here that I put together. Just some basic stuff to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about here. Let's say you want to sell $10,000 in a month time frame, right? You're a beginner seller, just starting out. You want to sell $10,000 in a month. Well, what are the things that you have to do in order to get there? Well, we already went through the systems that you have to go through in order to build that out. You have to do your day-to-day operational components, weekly, monthly. What does the actual purchasing look like? Well, okay, let's say at $10,000, you're making a conservative profit margin of 20%, which is $2,000, right? Let's just do this. 20%, so you're making $2,000 a month profit at a 20% margin if you're selling 10 grand. Well, what do you have to spend in order to derive that 2000? Well, as a beginner seller, I don't recommend looking at anything below a 30% ROI, 30. Why is that? Because you have limited capital. Most of the time, beginner sellers have limited capital. Of course, there are instances where people who go into this business have hundreds of thousands of dollars to start, but oftentimes those are people who have built other businesses before or have capital from other types of business endeavors or investments. So I'm talking to the beginners, right? If you don't have a ton of capital to spend, you're going to want to keep um, a 30-day, or excuse me, a 30% ROI minimum. So if we were to do the math on that backwards, you need to spend about $66,000 in order to derive a profit of $2,000 a month, right? Because as we just did, 30% our ROI of $6,667 is 2,000. Okay. Well, now that's data that we can actually use. What are you going to do about it? That's why I always say this sales number is not in our control entirely. I can control how much I spend. Of course, when I say spend, we are spending money profitably. So we're not just spending money to spend money. If you are having a difficult time spending money profitably, well, how many companies are you reaching out to a week? What kinds of brands are you sourcing? Are they small to mid-sized brands? Are they huge brands where you're just, sending inquiries on the website and you're not really making a whole lot of progress, right? Go back to the drawing board and look at those things. Let's say you want to sell 50,000 a month. Again, this is not in our control if we want to sell 50,000 a month. But say, conservatively speaking, I think a fair profit margin would be 17% on something like that. And I'm using conservative numbers here, guys. These are not, and they're very arbitrary too. Everybody's business is going to be different. It's based on your overhead operating expenses, cost of goods, different components. It's just, there's no way to do this other than choose an arbitrary number. But a reasonable profit margin, let's say at 50,000 sell, is 17%. Okay, 17% out the door. We'll say pre-tax. So you take your 50 times your 17, which derives you a profit of $8,500. Well, now you're making $8,500 a month. That's more than most people make at their job. It's above average. So, well, okay, what do you need to spend here? Let's say, at this point in your selling career, you've increased your volume a little bit. You are now reinvesting your capital. You're not using, your own personal money per se. Rather, you're playing with the business's money and you're continuing to reinvest it. Well, now maybe you can go down a little bit in ROI at a 25%. So you can look at, more products. So for every dollar you spend, you're making 25% of it. So how much to sell? How much do you need to spend to sell $50,000? Well, in this case, if you were at a 25% ROI, you need to sell. You need to spend $34,000, right? Which will derive you that profit of 8,500. So, that's how we do it. We work backwards. So let's just, do one more example. Let's say you want to sell 100,000 in a month, right? Maybe you've really built up your business and now you're looking to sell 100,000 this month. Okay, well, what's your profit margin? Maybe it's 15%. You're a bigger seller. You have, you have more capital to invest. You can look at these slightly lower ROIs for more volume, whatever the case may be. Well, in this case, you're making, $15,000 a month in business profit pre-tax assumption. Okay, so now let's say, let's work backwards here, right? We said this seller is taking a minimum of a 25% ROI. This seller is taking a minimum of a 30% ROI. Well, let's say this seller is taking a minimum of a 20% ROI. So that seller has to spend $75,000 to derive a $100,000 sale and a $15,000 profit, assuming your margin is 15%. Again, guys, there's a lot of assumptions here, but I just want to break this down to show you that it's not as much about the sales as you think. Once you start to direct your attention inward and follow the procedures that need to get done, focus on your spend goals, how many purchase orders you need to send in a week, how many different companies you want to work with in order to diversify your portfolio, then you are going to start seeing progress. And this is a long tail process. For those that don't know, this is only my second year doing wholesale full time. So as you continue to build this out, as you know, previously we were doing retail and online arbitrage, but full time wholesale, this is our second year involved in it. And as you continue to grow, you see what percentage you're up from the previous year. It's not about the month to month swings or the week to week swings or the day to day swings, which happen all the time. It's about year to year growth because that is what determines overall business success and increasing profits, right? What were you doing January of last year? What are you doing January of this year? I don't want to know what I'm doing January of this year and compare it to December of last year because my sales in December were a lot better than they were in January. You have to compare apples to apples. So compare consistent months over a period of time so that you can see what you're doing differently now, how many more accounts you have now, and things you need to change if maybe you're not doing as well as you were last year. Shannon, what ROI is the average? That's going to, again, since ROI is a measure of, for every dollar that you invest, it's a percentage of, for every dollar I invest, what is the amount that I make? So that is going to be specific for each seller. You might see a multi-million dollar seller that has a 5-10% ROI. Well, that seller has a lot more capital to disperse to invest in products that move very fast but have a much lower ROI. Whereas a seller, as I stated, with limited capital might need to start out with that 30% ROI. Typically for me in my business, I don't really try to look at anything below a 15% ROI. That's 15% ROI. Unless the profit number is quite high, so we'd have to be looking at 15, 20 plus profit per unit in order to look at something that sells below a 15% ROI, or the product has to move really fast in order to take below a 15% ROI. So that covered a lot of those topics there on spending, ROI, SOPs, outsourcing. Then, guys, this is just, rinse and repeat. So I'm going to stop sharing it for a moment. Rinse and repeat wholesale. That is the key with this business. Do it again and again and again. I mean, these things take time. You are not going to build this business overnight. It's going to take years. If you really want to sell, big numbers on Amazon, it takes years and you have to be in it for the long haul. If you want this as a side hustle, that's a different story. It might not take years. You can generate some good income on Amazon on the side. But if your goal is to really replace your 9 to 5 career, you got to treat this like a long-term process because that's what it is. With all that being said, I know we kind of bounced around a little bit. Got a slow start in the beginning, which I do apologize for. We were just waiting on some people joining. Let's open the floor up to any questions. I'm going to leave it open for the next 2 or 3 minutes. If you guys don't have any questions, feel free to drop a comment later and I will get those answered in a timely manner. As you know, I read through all the comments on my videos. If you guys are not in the free private Facebook group, I highly recommend joining it. A lot of people, here and in the group can vouch for the fact that we give away a lot of good content in those groups, and questions do get answered by me directly. So if you are interested and would like to join the free private Facebook group, I will leave a link for that in the description below. If there are no further questions, we will close out the video momentarily. So I'm not seeing any questions pop up, which is totally fine. Have any questions, drop the comment down below. We got one. Will the buy box rotate if other sellers have high quantity 500 plus stock and you are planning on sending in 50? Good question. Buy box does not rotate evenly anymore, as we know. Main factors that indicate buy box percentage are lowest price is number one. Number two, well, we don't necessarily know what number two is, but we know that lowest price is number one. So the rest of them, I'll just go in order of most common scenarios. Assuming that your price is the lowest, most of the time you're going to get the buy box. Sometimes we'll see sellers priced higher than other sellers. And in those cases, oftentimes we'll see the delivery date, the shipping date that the customer is going to receive it is a lot quicker than the seller that is priced lower than them. So Amazon will reward the higher price with the buy box because of faster delivery time. Inventory levels, as you mentioned, James, is another one, right? The higher the inventory levels, the higher the tendency to be get more of a buy box percentage. Another factor is the size of the seller account. So metrics, account feedback, positive feedback, sales history, length of time selling on Amazon are all components that do go into buy box percentage. That can seem a little bit discouraging for a new seller, but I can tell you that over the past year, as I've grown, our buy box percentage has increased. So it takes time. I would still, with the fact that we know that Amazon does reward the buy box with sellers that tend to have higher inventory levels, I would never advocate to place a huge order right off the bat unless you saw sales of your own, right? I always advocate to place a test order in the beginning so that you can assess and see how things go and then move on to your larger order so that you can mitigate risk. But in your instance, there are a lot of different variables that go into this equation. So the answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of different factors: shipping time, lowest price, stock levels, account feedback, all those components. That was a good question, James. We're approaching the 45-minute mark. So if you guys don't have any further questions, we're going to close it out. I appreciate you guys who have come on and, continue to support me on YouTube. If you have not already, make sure to hit that like button because it does help out the videos in the YouTube algorithm. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, certainly subscribe and hit that notification bell if you would like to stay up to date on all future content. My next video, which is coming out this week, is going to be on the return process for Amazon. Fulfillment by Amazon, fulfillment by merchant. So we'll break some content down there. Again, thank you guys for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time.